Ang ating bansa ay kasalukuyan nasa critical risk case classification. Ganun din ang NCR, ang 4A and 3 nasa critical risk classification na po. Kaya napaka-mahalaga po na bantayan itong mga lugar na ito at paigtingin ang atin po na tugon gamit ang ating mask, hugas, iwas, ventilation, and vaccination strategy.
That was Health Secretary Francisco Duque confirming that the country is now at critical risk for COVID-19. This as the Philippines reaches another grim landmark in its fight against COVID-19 on Tuesday. Total caseload since the pandemic started reached the 3 million mark.
This comes at a time when Omicron cases have surpassed the Delta variant in the latest sequencing run in the country. But while it has yet to be declared as the dominant variant in the Philippines, infection rate has gone up at tremendous speed, putting further pressure on the healthcare system. Good evening. I'm Maricel Halili.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. After being classified as low risk just in time for Christmas last year, the Philippines is now back at critical level in just a matter of weeks.
This as fears mount that the Omicron variant may have overtaken Delta as the dominant strain in the Philippines. This big story in my report. The country just breached another pandemic milestone. On Tuesday, total COVID infections topped 3 million as an additional 28,000 contracted the virus. Cases have been soaring to new heights since the year started, even reaching a high of 33,000. The health department did not mince words in describing the situation.
Ang ating bansa ay kasalukuyan nasa critical risk case classification na may pagtaas na 690%. Sa atin pong 7-day moving average of daily reported cases.
Health Secretary Francisco Duque laid down the grounds for declaring such. Two-week growth rate have skyrocketed more than 3,600%. Average daily attack rate climbed to 10.47%, while positivity rate is 40.4%. This as the Omicron variant has overtaken the Delta variant in the country's latest sequencing run.
So siya na po yung nag-dominate na variant, whereas before it was the Delta. So 60% of all the sequence runs ay Omicron na po.
But the Philippine Genome Center stopped short of calling it the dominant variant in the country. So far, 43 Omicron cases have been recorded in the country, 22 of which are international travelers.
Based on our data, USEC, marami pa ring Delta. We need to have further evidence po. So yun, USEC, ang ating DOH po gumagawa ng sampling sa different hospitals and institutions around the country so that malaman talaga natin yung situations.
As cases soar, the pressure escalates for the healthcare system with more and more medical staff getting infected. The Department of Health decided to shorten isolation time for COVID-positive healthcare workers. The DOH says augmentation is ready if needed.
Ang reason naman na naging 5 days yan for the, especially for the asymptomatics is because we believe that on the 5th day, if you're vaccinated, the viral load is very low, and you are no longer you can no longer transmit the virus to, or you are not contagious. 93% even with booster.
Acting presidential spokesperson Carlo Nograles assures the public that the government is ready in case there is a need for a more restrictive alert level. The IATF is set to meet on Thursday to discuss alert level status and travel classification of different countries. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
The entire Philippines, not just Metro Manila, is now considered at critical risk for COVID-19. But are the testing centers outside of NCR enough to give us a full picture of the COVID situation? That big question and more with Dr. Jaime Montoya, Executive Director of the DOST Philippine Council for Health Research and Development. Good evening, Dr. Jaime, and welcome to The Big Story.
Yeah, good evening, Robbie, and good evening to all your viewers and listeners.
Sir, balikan ko lang po yung question that as we introduce this segment, yung testing capacity natin. A lot of people, in fact, are testing at home, as you know. What does that mean for the real picture beyond the headline numbers that we're seeing?
Well, because we already knew for a fact that even before this surge happened, that with the introduction of the Omicron variant, we really expect the cases to go up. And especially as a carryover from the holiday mobility reunions and activities. So we've actually prepared for the increased demand for testing, and that is why the FDA, together with the Department of Health, has already laid down policies for actually expanding not just RT-PCR testing, but also antigen testing, and this time also allowing home testing for as long as certain criteria are followed.
Mm. Now, kanina pa sinabi ni Secretary Duque, and I think lumabas na naman po sa balita to, sa mga na-sequence, 60% are Omicron. This is short of anybody acknowledging that Omicron is already the dominant variant. Pero ano po ba implications nito? If Omicron is in fact the dominant variant right now, what implications will that have on strategy?
Well, as we've seen in other countries, no, in the US and in Europe, they may be at this stage also like us initially, wherein they're not sure whether it's going to be the predominant. But the conclusion always is that it's just a matter of time. And at the rate we're going, as far as increased cases are concerned, and even by the sampling that the PGC has done, that per sample run, they are seeing 60% of cases actually due to Omicron. It really gives you an idea that if you look at the general picture, if you're given the opportunity to sample everyone who are tested positive, the likelihood of being the predominant strain is there, and it's just a matter of time. So the implication really is that we're going to see more cases because of what we already know about Omicron variant. It does become the predominant strain. It's more infectious, so there's a higher likelihood of super spreaders out there. Some of them may even be mildly symptomatic and very mobile, therefore spreading more the infection. And so, although we say that it's less severe in terms of hospitalization and ICU requirements, but still we expect more cases in the coming days.
Okay, Dr. Montoya, maraming salamat po. That was Dr. Jaime Montoya, Executive Director of the DOST, Philippine Council for Health Research and Development.
Thank you.
These are the other big stories tonight. Priority testing. As testing centers become overwhelmed by the increased demand in RT-PCR tests, the Department of Health says it will consider giving priority to health workers and vulnerable individuals. COMELEC says it has yet to verify reports of the alleged hacking of its servers. Election bets now worry about the integrity of next year's polls. And something definitely new this year. The first successful heart transplant of big heart to a human. How did that happen? These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Maricel Halili. More than a week into the new year, the Health Department says over 6,500 healthcare workers are under quarantine, crippling the manpower of some hospitals.
In order to ease the strain on the health system, DOH has shortened the quarantine period to 5 days. But healthcare workers say they're not pleased with this recommendation. JC Cosico explains.
This is familiar territory for 51-year-old nurse Darlene. Last January 6, she tested positive for COVID-19 for the second time. This time, though, symptoms are mild.
Once in a while, talagang pumupunta rin ako sa ward. So, I could have had my exposure there kasi sa ngayon po, sunod-sunod din yung nagpa-positive namin na mga patients.
Like her, Nurse Joseph contracted the virus on his very birthday last January 8.
Almost one-third na po ng mga personnel po sa operating room is may nag-COVID positive na po sila, sir. So, come up na po sila, sir, na magpa-swab na rin po yung mga natitira pang personnel po ng operating room.
Darlene and Joseph are just two of the more than 6,500 healthcare workers now under quarantine in Metro Manila. That's 7.2% of the almost 92,000 healthcare workforce in NCR. As a result, the health department has given hospitals the license to shorten quarantine for healthcare workers to 5 days from the previous 10 days. This does not sit well for both Darlene and Joseph.
Ayoko naman po dumating yung point na sabihin ko sa sarili kong ayoko na because nobody's taking care of me.
Mukha ba kami mga machines na kailangang ayusin lang, pagkatapos ayusin, trabaho agad. Napapagod naman din po kami.
Health worker group Filipino Nurses United is also dismayed with a shortened quarantine period.
Yung long hours of work and heavy load na pagtatrabaho will lead us to getting weaker. Ito nga negative tayo, napapagod tayo. Yung pa kayang positive.
The Philippine College of Physicians understands the government's decision as manpower becomes depleted for some hospitals. But the PCP warns this may cause the virus to spread further.
So ang concern namin, kung sakaling positive, no, yung healthcare worker, baka maikalat sa iba.
The DOH assures the policy has gone through proper assessment.
Hinding-hindi po magpapatupad ang ating gobyerno ng isang polisiya na magpuput sa risk ang ating mga pasyente at ang ating mga healthcare workers.
For now, the government is studying if the 5-day quarantine and isolation can be implemented on the general population. For News 5, JC Cosico, We Are One News.
The Health Department welcomes the decision of many Filipinos to self-regulate as cases rise. But business owners and transport providers are less than happy with the decision of many to just stay at home. Jenny Dongon has the story.
Lines are long at this terminal in Philcoa, Quezon City, not of passengers but of jeepneys. It's been a dry spell for the likes of Mang Ernesto since cases started to spike in NCR. This is a far cry from the peak of activity in December, when Ernesto would already have his boundary set aside as early as 8 in the morning. Now, his jeep has been waiting in line for more than 2 hours.
Pag hindi naman kami pumila, wala naman kami maisasakay. Paano yung krudo? Napakamahal ng krudo.
Mang Ernesto has observed that fewer people are coming out due to the COVID-19 spike and stricter restrictions for the unvaccinated. This is the same scenario for small businesses like this karinderya in Mandaluyong. Nani said they'd been lucky to even have 20 customers in a day.
Di siya katulad ng December na tuloy-tuloy po yung customer namin, halos wala kaming pahinga. Pagpasok ng January, as in ang hina po, sobrang hina.
Such is also the case in malls where foot traffic has visibly gone down. Even vehicular traffic is now lighter in major thoroughfares such as Commonwealth and EDSA. Over at the MRT Line 3, ridership has lessened from a daily average of 200,000 that has dropped to 140,000. For the health department, this is a welcome sign that people are self-regulating.
Pag tinignan po natin ngayon, pami-pamilya hindi na lumalabas ng bahay, pami-pamilya nag-isolate ng establishments are closing for 2 to 3 days just to disinfect. Everybody's helping in this regard.
The MRT3 management is doing their part. They have started random COVID-19 antigen testing among passengers who consent to the swabbing. Among 48 who got tested on Tuesday, 6 came out positive.
Sinasabi natin na mag-isolate sila, mag-report po sa LGU nila, and also option for possible confirmatory test sa RT-PCR.
Amid the COVID-19 surge in NCR, Kapati assures the public that MRT operations would not be affected. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, We Are One News.
For the big story in sports, the Philippine Sports Commission is seeking the help of the Philippine Dispute Resolution Center to resolve the rift between pole vaulter E.J. Obiena and the Philippine Athletics Track and Field Association. In an online forum, PSC Chairman Butch Ramirez said that he is optimistic that both sides will soon come to the table and get the process started. Ramirez is also hopeful that a compromise will be reached even if the mediation is a, quote, difficult and treacherous process. The result of all this, however, will depend on the attitude of Obiena and Patafa during discussions.
Without humility from both sides, AJ, Patafa, and POC, without humility, without generosity, respect and forgiveness, it's impossible to resolve the disputes, even if PDLC would sit down with us with the expertise on mediation. Believe me.
Time for another quick break. When we return, as laboratories struggle to meet demand, the health department now wants a priority list for COVID testing. COMELEC is set to release its final report this week on the alleged server hacking, but candidates and voters alike are starting to worry about the elections. A heart of a pig. Can it replace the heart of a man? This surgeon says it can, and they've done it to save the life of a 57-year-old man. These and other big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Maricel Halili. As cases continue to increase, the lines in testing centers get longer.
To address this, the DOH says they will consider giving priority testing to groups that need it more. Mon Gualvez with the story.
It was a 2-hour wait for motorists at this diagnostic laboratory in Pasay City. Even walk-ins wanting to get tested had to wait for hours. According to the laboratory, they even have converted the vaccination site into a testing center just to accommodate the influx of those wanting to get swabbed. But with the high demand comes the delays in releasing results.
The lab is functioning normally, and then it's just more of pushing out the results from the initial influx that happened during the start of the surge.
For DOH, the sudden onslaught of people wanting to get tested for COVID-19 isn't new. It's just that right now, the huge chunk of manpower of the testing laboratories at the moment have been tested positive for COVID-19.
For this testing laboratory in Manila, this means servicing only those with appointments.
So far, na-manage naman natin. From time to time, ang gate namin open and close. May mga clients na gustong-gusto magpa-test. As much as we want to, hindi talaga natin sila kayang i-accommodate.
The laboratory said it is also prioritizing OFWs, those in vulnerable sector, and those already experiencing symptoms. They also don't do express results for the meantime.
We tried na ibigay sa kanila as fast as we could. Pero syempre, we can only give so much din, di ba? Kasi nga limited ang manpower natin.
Speaking on the chiefs, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres said that they are considering a prioritized COVID testing policy amid the increasing demand.
Ang testing dapat, clinical management, i-prioritize natin yung mga vulnerable natin. Senior citizens, those with comorbidities, yung mga immunocompromised, our healthcare workers.
Should this be approved, Vergeres says those not in the priority list to isolate immediately to prevent spreading the virus. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
COMELEC says they are still verifying the alleged system breach and will come out with their own report this week. The Manila Bulletin Tech News team reports on hackers getting hold of the usernames and pins of vote-counting machines from COMELEC servers. But COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez says that information does not yet exist in COMELEC systems because the files are not yet completed. Manila Bulletin Technology Editor Art Samaniego told One News Now that they did their part by informing the poll body before posting the article. Samaniego says while these hacking claims raise concerns on the integrity of the 2022 polls, votes still cannot be tampered.
No, but for the information that being leaked, the information that we have, no, votes cannot be tampered with. Saka, let us all remember that the vote counting machines are not connected to the internet.
Presidential candidates for the 2022 elections are calling on COMELEC to conduct a probe on the alleged server hacking. Vice President Lenny Robredo and her running mate Kiko Pangilinan asked the COMELEC to immediately confirm if the server hacking did in fact take place and, if at all, the extent of the compromise involved. Senator Manny Pacquiao, on the other hand, says the alleged server breach shows very serious security flaws on the poll body's computer system. Meanwhile, Senator Ping Lacson said their in-house cybersecurity team is carrying out an independent investigation. The camp of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., meanwhile, says they are observing the developments of COMELEC's own investigation before jumping into any conclusions. A new breakthrough in the field of medicine. U.S. surgeons have successfully implanted a heart from a genetically modified pig into a 57-year-old man.
This is considered to be a medical first that could one day help solve the chronic shortage of organ donations. The surgery was performed by a team at the University of Maryland Medicine. The patient, David Bennett, had a terminal heart disease and had been deemed ineligible for a conventional heart transplant. So instead of a human heart, they used a pig's.
What do you think they started selling that? 40. 40?
It's not just any ordinary pig heart. The heart that they gave Bennett was genetically modified. 3 genes responsible for rejection of pig organs by human immune systems were removed, and another gene was taken out to prevent the excessive growth of pig heart tissue. And while it's too early to tell if the operation was truly a success, this is a step in the decades-long quest to one day use animal organs for life-saving transplants. Amazing.
Galing. Kung maging successful yon, definitely it will save lives.
No, certainly. A lot of people, alam mo na, mahaba yung pila sa mga organs. And as we say, science keeps marching forward. And hopefully science is also the one that's going to save all of us from everything that we're facing right now.
Yes, agree. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News, for more in-depth analysis. Visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And on behalf of Gretchen Ho, I'm Maricel Halili. We are One News. Good evening.